You know, there's a lot of discussion these days by some leading scientists that quantum mechanics may be a way in which we can account for the universe. But there's also the question of, does quantum mechanics point to God and to God's existence? To explore this question, we've invited Dr. Darren Williams. He's a physical chemist who has a lot of experience teaching at the university level. Darren, does quantum mechanics point to God, or is it a challenge or a defeater for God? How do you unpackage that topic?
It's certainly not a defeater at all. I haven't run across anything in studying quantum mechanics that makes me go, oh goodness, I wish I didn't know that.
Wow.
You know? I think that's the response sometimes when people get this cognitive dissonance. You can't unhear something, you can't unsee something,
Yes.
You can't unknow it. And I have been so encouraged throughout all my studies to see things that are completely consistent with my Christian worldview. It's made me a better scholar.
Wow. Now, is there something in the phenomenon of the quantum level that actually evidences God or points in the direction of God?
There's that you bring up a good point with evidence. That word is definitely laden with quite a lot of undergirding and I wouldn't say baggage, but it's a heavy word, evidence. Yes. And it's a very special word for me too, because I also teach, in addition to physical chemistry, I teach forensic chemistry, where we really dive into what is considered evidence. And there's two types of evidence. There's direct evidence, which would be eyewitness testimony, and that's it. Someone saw something happen, and then they give their direct testimony as to what they observed. And all of the rest of the evidence is indirect evidence. And so it requires inferential skills. You need abductive reasoning to look at the evidence and see what it implies and come to the conclusion that best fits all of those different pieces of evidence. And I mean, it leads us to be careful with our terms. We wouldn't say that this proves a person's guilt, but it's consistent with their guilt.
Right.
And that same thing is with scientific exploration. I wouldn't say that any of my studies or even the arguments that I've seen, like fine-tuning arguments and so on, prove, but they're certainly consistent with a God that is incredibly mindful and incredibly intricate and incredibly powerful to have created a world that has the logical properties, the reasonable properties, the scientific properties. The book of nature is fantastically constructed. And so quantum mechanics fits right within that. I think what's interesting too is this idea of the wave nature, the wave properties of nature. That was unexpected, and that created a revolution in science in the early 20th century.
So all of this is kind of that from a logical point of view, that abductive reasoning, you reason to the best explanation, that quantum mechanics doesn't serve as a challenge or defeater for God, but part of that kind of intellectual software, if you will, to the universe that requires or points to a mind behind the universe.
Right, and one of the things that was an aha moment for me, I mean, you look at the fine-tuning argument, you think back to the ancient Greeks looking at the stars, they see regularity, and as I'm new to the whole philosophical reading list, and so I'm catching up on a lot of those things. And just to think of this idea of a prime mover, you know,
Aristotle.
That is such a fantastic concept. And then you get into the quantum realm and you realize that everything can be described as waves, and waves are in motion. And that is completely consistent with a prime mover. What sustains these waves? In our everyday experience, most waves decay. Most waves peter out. But here we have at the very base of nature, for every particle in the universe, a wave description that goes on and on and on and doesn't decay.
Wow.